there are various other commissions or committees in this town that should have input. Other towns, perhaps, like Wareham and Sandwich, should be involved. The broader region, and I know there's a regional transportation group, needs to be involved. And perhaps most importantly, from my perspective, I think the public needs to be heard. Okay, there's certainly pros and cons and different positions that will evolve. And if a proper process is used, I think at the end of the day, a decision will be reached. It may not be a consensus, it may not satisfy everyone, but as long as the process has been consistent and fairly applied, then I think that's what you have to live with. So that's what I would like to see. I would like to see this board present to, I would say, the MBTA and the DOT, possibly a carbon copy to the governor and our representatives and our senator, much as the letters that I have previously written, you know, sort of going on record as saying that's what we want to see happen in terms of where this project goes or doesn't go. And, you know, while I'm concerned about the south side of the canal, I'm also concerned about what may, you know, if nothing were to happen there, that's fine from my perspective, but I'm also concerned as a taxpayer and a citizen here, you know, what would happen in Buzzards Bay itself. I think it's critically important to the development of the town, what happens. So, again, that's sort of where I stand. I thought I'd start the year off, you know, presenting these comments so that we don't take our eye off it. And again, I would encourage you to take that step. You know, talk about it yourselves and see if that's something that you would commit to. I certainly would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, correspondence. Mr. Bland, would you take us through that?
Certainly will. We have a very thin layer of correspondence here, not much from the last meeting. We have exactly 3 on our list, and I don't know if there'll be any additions towards the end. There was one letter that was referred to last week when we met from Mr. and Mrs. Walter Jaworski, and they wrote this letter primarily to Mr. Ellis to my left, but they also wanted to make sure that the letter was copied to all of the selectmen. It's with regard to a concern that the costs of supporting the firefighters in town and the cost to the town of Bourne might be a budget buster, as he quotes himself here, and then refers us to an article he wanted us all to be privy to. It's from a Boston publication. We're not sure which one. It seems to be a Boston publication, the title of which is Retiree Healthcare, a Budget Buster. And he has notes in that for us to take a look at with regard to those budgetary issues. We also have a copy of the DEP denial of the application for a mooring, and then we also have that followed by the letter from the aggrieved party, Mr. Peter Gay, who is appealing the non-renewal of the mooring permit for which he applied in Phineas Harbor. And then lastly, we have a letter of interest from a Ms. Lori Cooney, who would like to serve on the Recreation Committee here in town, and submitted a letter of interest for us to peruse. And that takes us through all the entirety of the correspondence, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Any questions on any of the correspondence from members of the board?
I'm sorry, I'm not a member of the board, I'll wait.
Do we have Mr. Jaworski's physical address? Because normally when we take a correspondent, we don't just take a name, we need a physical address to go with it.
I'd have to ask Mr. Ellis.
Yeah, I can provide that for you.
I
Lives in
think
Pecasset.
he's a Pocasset resident.
He's retired military.
Do we have any openings on the,
I
Recreation.
believe we filled the last opening on the rec, but I have Mary looking into that, and we will be in contact with you.
okay, good.
There is one other piece of correspondence that I'll ask that be submitted to the record that came in today, and I thought it was important, from the Department of Fish and Game relative to the proposed effluent pipeline connection to the Guard wastewater system. The short of it is they are generally supportive of the town's project, pending a Article 97 disposition that Representative Vieira and Senator DiMacedo are working on our behalf. But it came in today, and I wanted to be sure that it was noted
Right.
today.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Bland?
I'm sorry to backtrack here, but I just want to also bring to the attention that with Ms. Cooney's letter of interest, she did submit a voluminous
Yeah, it's
three-page CV, three or
Very-
four.
Impressive indeed.
Very impressive credentials, long list of activities and committees she's served with and been involved with. And if we don't have a room for her on the rec committee, maybe we can consider her for something else.
That'd be nice. Okay. Here's the, Tom, you gonna keep this correspondence?
Yes,
Like, can you keep that?
Yes.
That's the original?
yes.
So I think you ought to keep that, just so we don't lose it. All right, item number 6, budget priorities, 30 minutes, long-term plan to review and assist in establishing. Blank. Didn't say anymore.
Well, we have handed out to you, Linda has been working she's been working feverishly. I've been adding to her fever and not providing any Advil to help that over the last several days. And the document you received this evening is changed from the document you received last week, which will probably be different than the document you will receive next week. And it will probably change several times between now and town meeting. I note a couple of things before Linda gets going on this. This makes some revenue assumptions and it makes some expenditure assumptions as well. Some things we don't know yet. We don't know local aid yet. We don't know the governor's budget. We don't actually know the full impact of health insurance or changes that may be made to that as we move forward. We are making some assumptions relative to the solar electric, based on fairly good numbers. And there will be probably some differences as we move forward in the collective bargaining process over the next several months as well. But with that, I guess I'll turn it over to you and interject when I think it's necessary, which probably won't be necessary at all, so.
That would be wise not to.
Yes.
Do you want to go back to the free cash, how we came to some of these first? Do you think that would be better?
I think that would be a good place to start. The other thing that this does, is takes into consideration our new policies, utilization of 50% of available free cash toward the budget. And we'll show you where we end up as we go forward.
We're gonna go back to the plan for now. All right, so starting off, on the long-term plan, it's the current budget that you'll see up there, which is, it's kind of in a pink color, is FY16. This does not include any of the proposed budget amendments that could be coming in the February town meeting. So it's currently what we have now as voted by town meeting in October. And the proposed FY17 budget is in the yellow on the center column. So in between the two columns, you'll see what is the increase or decrease percentage-wise. For FY17, we've put in an, our assumed rate of growth as far as new growth, which was last year was an extremely different amount than what we estimated. We put in 400,000 this year. Still unsure if that's going to be the right figure. Tomorrow night at the Finance Committee meeting, we're having the assessor come in to discuss how she comes up with the new growth estimate and where she feels comfortable. So that's to be something to watch to see, where we come up with the 400,000. The excluded debt service that you'll see on line 13 went up about 500,000. That is the new DPW building, which has come into the tax billing process coming forward. And so with that increase, you'll also see a very large increase in the debt service further down in 17 because we did a $14 million bond issue this past December. The Cape Cod Commission tax we're increasing it by, roughly 2% there, the 180,900. So our tax base increased from 42,870,000 to 44,800,000 in FY17 going forward. That's what we see the projection to be. We, as Tom said, we've leveled state aid as there's been no budgets come out from the state as of yet. So when we get our first one of that, but I think the trend is that they're gonna pretty much keep it stable.
It appears that it's gonna be held, at least at what it is. There is a concern, that the governor has proposed relative to regional school transportation. Now, while he hasn't made any real comments about it, we understand that he may be saying subject to further appropriation, which would make it, eligible, should he have to cut the budget later in the year to 9C cuts where it hasn't been eligible, subject to 9C cuts in the past.
The next category, local receipts, we've proposed, we've stayed pretty on target with what we took in for FY15. So this column over here is our actual receipts for each specific column. And the only one which is still a little bit below is motor vehicle excise. That will also be discussed tomorrow night. But motor vehicle is, it's one that we've tried to, the DOR has always told us to be conservative on that. They will hold that against us if we are not. And we have been, and we've actually, that's been one of the areas of revenue where we've actually done very well as far as what we budget. But it's a very hard item to budget because you have to basically have people buy the same amount of cars the next year in order to keep maintaining that level. The only other item that we looked very hard at is the recurring energy credit. That has been, it's new to us this year. It's the energy credits, the solar energy credits we're getting. We were trending higher, and I talked to Jonathan today. I actually thought we were gonna get more, and we could be up to 800,000. We had a discussion today. Our next payment came in, it dropped considerably. Our bills, you know, in coinciding with that, we've decided that we don't think it's gonna trend to be as high as it was trending. So we've kept it back at 600 till we get through the first year and really see how we make out. Because we also, with the money that comes in, we have to pay New Bedford Housing Authority their share, and we also have to pay DG Solar their share.
The broker. Just quickly on that, when we signed the agreement with Blue Wave at the time, it was based on a 14-cent per kilowatt hour rate, and we had a 9-cent per kilowatt hour rate, and the reimbursement or the credit was gonna be the difference, that 5 cents, if you will, difference. Over the last year or so, the price went up to 18 cents roughly a kilowatt hour, so we were getting a larger split. It was almost like a 9-cent split. That has started to trend down again, and it's down to somewhere in the 17-cent range, and it's expected to continue to either stabilize or come down some more as the price of crude continues to come down. Other electricity that becomes cheaper to create, so our split becomes a little bit less if the price comes down, but we're still way above what the original contract thought was going to be at a 14-cent rate.
You have the Cape Cod Commission tax listed on here, but what I see missing, maybe because it's on a cherry sheet and it's not on here, is the CCRTA.
That's a cherry sheet estimate. That's going to be around $80,000 this year.
Is it still gonna be CCRTA, or is it because the MBTA?
My guess for right now, because it may be an MBTA thing. We've had no correspondence from them since we've had the meeting in Boston. So we're going to make the assumption that it's going to be a CCRTA. The amount's going to be about the same from what I understand, because we're not getting any service.
Yeah.
So it will still, whatever it's called, it should be in the $80,000 to $86,000 range.
What you see on the top, when you start on the top of where we add it to the tax rate, we're allowed to add that tax to the tax rate on top of, so where
You'll
you
see it on
add-
the
You see
expenditure
it added in,
side.
it also comes as an expenditure too. The next category of special revenues are a payment for what we assume we'll take in from PL 874, which is the federal side of the money from the schools. We have not we have 150,000 budgeted for FY '17. We have not yet taken in that amount of money. We're down, I think we've taken in about 90,000. So if by the time town meeting comes, we're not taking in 150,000, we will have to drop that off as well. The ambulance fees, we've increased to cover the cost of the discount for FY '17. So, and currently, right now, per the request of one of the selectmen, Mike in my office is doing an analysis as best we can. We're trying to put forth something to identify runs per the ambulance, how we're doing as far as cost. We're kind of trying to do a cost analysis of the ambulance as far as like what we're taking in. It's a little bit out of our territory, but we're trying, we're getting some information from Coastal to see, collections have been, this year, trending extremely high, so we're just trying to make sure that we're not unrealistic in budgeting going forward, that we all of a sudden take too much and then have nothing left going forward. The CPA debt service is what we can charge, that's their share of the debt that we have to pay in FY '17, the 617. And then the Title V loan repayments, the revenue for the payments that we owe on that debt. And waterways, that's a 2% increase for what we're using from FY '16 to go towards funding the Department of Natural Resources. Down, the last item we have on this column is overlay surplus, which is fiscal, we looked at fiscal 2007, 8, and 9, and that is what we have estimated that we can close out from the assessors. They'll have to write a letter to have that closed out by the Board of Selectmen, and that can be closed and used.
That's the
as a revenue
123, I'm
source.
sorry. How much, that's the 123,
123, 851. Oops.
153, 52.
This is not my,
So if I could, then the 150 and 12, the 350 and 13, and the 114 are all reserved for land court or other or cases. I'm just looking at the, it says overlay surplus for 12, 13.
That's what we
Oh.
used.
You've used
It's
that one.
actually-
no,
I'm sorry,
is
okay.
he looking at, that's what we've raised on, are you going across the long-term
Oh,
plan?
special revenues, I'm
That's what
sorry.
we raised each year on the tax rate to
Okay.
go for any tax court cases.
Right,
So
18.
that would that stays with each year.
Right.
So whatever you raise in 12 stays with 12's properties. So these are the older years that we're now saying that we have no longer anybody that's due a refund or is gonna file
Oh,
a
so the
case.
123, 851 is prior to 2012?
Yes,
Oh,
they're
wow.
FY '17, FY '8, and FY '9.
7, 8, and 9.
Yep.
Wow.
All right, now I've made this bigger.
And we have those issues, we have some still outstanding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take it back to making it bigger.
You broke it.
I know. All right, let's go back. I know. Make it bigger. Okay, Carol.
Had it right there.
It'll help
Now
if I
hit
do it this.
this big square, no, that's right.
Special revenues
Okay.
down almost 40%.
Make it bigger.
Budgeted.
Thank you.
What's this?
Yeah, it's down almost 40%.
Mm.
It's a big percentage.
Mm.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay?
The next group of items are the I-swim and sewer offsets that we get for the admin fee. They are down slightly due to, a reduction in force in I-swim, what they have budgeted, and the sewer department is just change in expenses. The host community fee is budgeted again at 600,000. Keep hitting that thing. The expenses are coming up for, general government, public safety, DPW. There'll be a rate of growth in between that you'll see the change. These include, FY17s include the, increases in budget changes that could be happening at the February town meeting. So while 16s do not, 17s do have those changes in them.
Just so the board is aware, the intent, and the board will meet on this next week. We've worked with the schools, the chairman and I, and the chair of the school committee, and they've made substantial cuts, but they feel to make things work, there's a $130,000 number that seems to be, it's less than they want, than they think they absolutely need, but it's certainly something they can work with, based on the full amount of the cut that they would have had made. The town is looking to put in a little bit more money, $112,000, to take care of some things that are really being hit hard, and that may be raised a little bit or adjusted around a little bit as we move forward as well.
The budget that you all received last week, there's just a few changes from that to what you'll see on here. I think one of them was snow and ice. I think we took 100,000 back out of snow and ice. And that is, it does have more, but not as much as was in the original budget that they received. The debt service is where a larger increase happened. That is the 500,000 increase in the exempt debt, and even still another almost 750,000 in the exempt, non-exempt issues increased. There's a, even though this, in 17, the debt service expense jumps, but in 18, it actually drops again as a lot of the other older debt falls off.
Drops about 420,000
In,
next year.
in 18, yes. The public utilities budget, that was another one that, had a discussion with Jonathan over. It could, by the time we get a couple more months out, we could find that that is not enough. It's trending right on target right now. It's the first year we've taken everyone's bills for electric and paid it out of this one item, so it's kind of a test case to see how close we come. The unemployment has dropped as the cuts have not been as much as had it been anticipated. And the others are all in line with where they are this year. The group insurance, we've increased it 3.5% depending on how we go forward with the plan. That could require just a slight increase or maybe even a small decrease, but that we won't know for a couple of weeks.
Right.
Cherry sheets, estimated just slightly higher on the expense side, and the offsets are the same as they are this year until we see one round of the states. There's no capital in there. The reserve fund transfer is up more in line with the budget, the policy, which says it will be at 5% of the budget. And that's just the summary of the revenue categories, the expenditure, of the budget. So the deficit between the revenue and the expenditures is $1,110,088. We've put that would be covered by free cash, and that is currently our free cash. If we look at our free cash policy, we're short of, we've actually taken 104,000 or 106,000 more than what the policy would allow, but we're do it in a more trending basis where we look at where we start, what we think the good revenues coming in and the expenses coming against that will be, so that we're not waiting till we get to the end of the year and then saying, you know, look at all the extra that we had come in, and we should have used some of it. So, let's see if I can.
What are you looking for, Linda?
My other file. I don't like this little drive.
That's the next sheet.
Yeah. I take it out, put it back in.
Can you go back to the one you just had opened? Under fire, yeah. Crazy.
Stupid. There it is. So, within this, we took what our free cash balance is as of July 1st, 2015, the $3,538,836. Taking off what we've already voted for unpaid bills. We've had a town meeting that adjusted what we were gonna use for free cash, so adding back what we did not use in free cash. The miscellaneous revenue of 300,000 is, we had a auction in this year, of which we've taken in close to 300,000 miscellaneous revenues already. Anticipating the sale of the Cody School going through of 400,000, and energy credits up above and beyond the 600,000. Originally, we had that at 200,000. I thought it would come in higher, but we've dropped that today. Town meeting's looking to add 150,000 to snow and ice, add 130,000 to the school department budget, and 112,000 to the town meeting budget, town side of the government, which is 55,000 to insurances, 22,000 to the bus driver and the COA, and
35 over the library.
35,000 to the library, split between salaries and expenses. So it's-
However, there may be some other discussions that number may go up.
Slightly. But we're gonna meet it Thursday on that.
So basing it on, I know this is just slightly different from what's actually in the thing. Basing it on 5% of the operating budget, it'd be about 2.9 million. And then at what it's supposed to be half of the difference that we could use towards the budget. So currently it would be about $1,004,000 that you could use, and we're at 1110. So just slightly over the percent.
About 106,000 or
Of what we could use for the budget.
a little
for
less than
free cash.
from a percentage standpoint, it's a little less than 1/4 or 1%, but it's still off.
But there's still a lot of,
Flux either way.
yeah, well, there's a lot of unknowns for a couple of weeks, especially with the health insurance being one of them.
So there's a moving target, too.
Everything's a moving target, but you needed to have a baseline to start with, and that's
Yep, I get it.
where we think we are at this point in time. If there's a windfall in state aid, I don't expect that. If there's a windfall in payments on state-owned land, I don't believe this is the year they have to do the reval of that. I think it's next year. So I don't expect that. Maybe, but I don't think so. There's not a lot on the state side that I think we can count on for huge increases. We're really kind of, I don't want to say left to our own devices, because if they can level fund local aid, given that he's having to make a $50 million cut in the middle of the year, and he's not touching the governor, he is not touching local aid. I think he's committed. He and the Polito administration are committed to local aid, so we'll see how that goes forward. questions?
Mr. Chairman.
You have 4 more minutes for that 30 minutes. Go right ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
With regard to that
I'm not
last
used to
statement.
this.
With regard to that last statement, Tom, what has the governor been saying with regard to their commitment to maintaining local aid? Have they
There-
gone on record as,
I think the governor will make his commitment known at the MMA meeting, which is in another week and a half or so. That's generally when the governor lays out what his priorities are for the year prior to his submitting the budget to the legislature, prior to his budget announcement. So I don't want to speculate as to where he is. We think that he's going to be understanding of the cities and towns based on the outreach that they have done to the cities and towns in the first year. It would seem that he understands what's going on with that. Lieutenant Governor's been all over the state as well. So we're optimistic that he's going to, what we have, we're hoping is the baseline from where we'll go forward, but I don't want to speculate as to what the governor might say.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Good. Anybody else? Questions on the presentation? Any members of the public have anything on the presentation? Okay, moving on. Are we going to number, are we still on 6? Does she have more? Go right ahead. Could you please take the microphone and,
Mayor Jane Mastrangelo, Chair of the Finance Committee. I'm actually following up for your thought on something that we talked about at the year-end review, which had to do with adding ISWEM OPEB liability to their administrative costs. And I think we have looked at having ISWEM debt paid off by the time the landfill is non-operational, whenever that is, and that we should be looking at that with OPEB as well, that at least we should be doing the ARC for ISWIM as a administrative cost that would then allow us to put money into our OPEB trust fund, because I think it's dangerous for us to be thinking about paying OPEB for ISWIM employees when ISWIM is not operating anymore, and that's a late thing that's gonna come up later, so.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, excellent point. Dan and Linda are getting together before the end of the month to look at their debt schedules on what needs to be refinanced and what.
I've already, I sent an email when we got done last week
Okay.
to our Lynn Foster, and she's asked her to put together that
Okay.
schedule, so she's already doing that.
All right, so once we have an idea where that is and the closure of the end of the life of the landfill may have,
Well, it's moving.
it's a moving
We don't know
target,
where
but
it's gonna be.
when we're looking at that, OPEB was something that we had talked about, Linda and I had made cognizant. We know we have to do that, it's just not in here yet. That's
And
all.
I'm just thinking the OPEB, actuarially, I don't know when they do their calculations, where they do it separate for ISWIM, or they put them all into the same
They're
pool
all
of
in-
employees.
They're all in the same pool.
So we might need to do something to
Yeah.
kind of separate that, so
Right.
that we make sure we get that piece of money from ISWIM and we're not left with that. The only other comment that I would make is I've come to the realization, and looking at this, that the long-term financial planning model does a really pretty good job of estimating expenditures, and it's the revenue side where we tend to be conservative in our estimating revenues, so that the revenue estimates in future years, I'm not talking about really the current year or even the next year, but when you start having a cumulative effect of underestimated revenues and include nothing for turnbacks or additional revenues in terms of the free cash long-term projection, I think it makes the out years look a little worse than they're actually gonna be. And it's probably something that would require some, really thinking about assumptions, but it's just with a caution. When you look at beyond FY 16 to for FY 17, okay, for FY 18, okay. But when you start getting to FY 19, if there's $1 million or $2 million worth of revenue difference over those 2 years, then it's gonna look like we wouldn't have enough money, but in fact we might. So it's just consideration. It's kind of a caveat when you look at this. You have to look at it. I think the fact that we're looking at it at this point in time is really, really good, because it really gives us a good frame for the budget discussion. And I'm really happy that it's happening now, so, thank you.
Great. Thank you. More on 6, or are we moving on to 7?
Anything more, Linda? No. Thank you, and that, again,
Thank you, Linda.
takes an awful lot of time and effort to put these together the first couple of times through, and you will have several more iterations of this as the budget process moves forward.
Okay. Changed in 6 days. This is the other one. Check that. Okay, budget discussion, progress on memos regarding liaison work with departments. We want to start with Mr. Meyer.
Well, Mr. Bourne and I, with the Finance Committee Chair, met with the Budget Subcommittee of the Bourne School Committee just before we came in here. And so it was actually my first time at that Budget Subcommittee, and in some ways it was eye-opening, to say the least, of how they think of what makes them get from point A to point B, and so it's educational, and I think it will make it easier for us to understand when they present their budget in March, at their March public hearing, of why they got to that number. You know, just because we're advocates, we're liaisons, doesn't mean we have to fight the number, we have to understand what the number is more than anything else, and that's what this process is all about. And also we want what's in the best interest of the townspeople, in general. So it's just part of a process, and I look forward to it.
Yeah, do you want to outline, or do you have anything more to add to that,
Sure.
Mr. Glenn? And if you'd like to outline what other departments you're going to liaise with?
Sure, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just to piggyback on Mr. Meyer's comments, it was actually a very informative meeting with the school budget subcommittee. I had not attended either, so it was a first time for me. They were appreciative of the fact that we took the time to spend with them, getting to be more familiar with their budget, their needs, their concerns. I'd like to reiterate that town administrator was correct. They're going to be looking for somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think you said the number 130, they were looking maybe at the number closer to 140. I mean, there's a fluctuating number.
And the superintendent and I are aware that there may be some fluctuation in that either way, it may up or down. They've run into a couple of unanticipated, I don't want to say impediments, but unanticipated cost hits that they have to deal with, and we've been in good communication relative to that.
It was very interesting to actually hear some of their methodology, and I think we had an enlightening conversation about unanticipated needs that actually do occur during the course of an academic year, an influx of students, influx of other costs that are legitimate and unanticipated. And I think the conversation I had with them was generally ourselves and the general public, I think, appreciates. While we might not be happy to see cost overruns or unanticipated costs, as long as there's a methodology and a reasoning, for the most part, most people are accepting of meaningful, legitimate costs. So when they talked about the need for going for before special town meeting for this particular number, $130,000, $140,000 for a new ESL staff, and then other supplies and other various needs there. It made sense. It made sense after speaking with them. They also did I appreciated from a business perspective, they performed a little SWOT analysis, which I guess they do on a quarterly basis. They do a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis, and they looked at different things, strengths they had where they weren't necessarily strengths of their particular system, but more advantages that had occurred, like we've had a very warm winter, so their snow and ice removal budget is down, so they're under budget in those areas. The same thing with,
now.
for now. Same thing with heat, for now, you're right. But then other opportunities, they talked about some contract savings with regard to gas with a 3-year agreement they just signed. And that was, they're going to save somewhere between $8,000 and $10,000 a year for the next 3 years on this new contract. Some weaknesses there, have some aging facilities and some aging infrastructure, like some boiler issues in the middle school and the high school. So some of the facilities' climate control issues can be repaired. So that we talked about some of the warranty issues. We talked about some that were out of warranty and uncovered, and substantial costs ranging in tens of thousands of dollars to repair to hundreds of thousands of dollars to replace. It was,
Also, they're talking about the lack of action from the Cape Light Compact over, they're supposed to be putting a plan together that will be a savings to the school district. They're also supposed to be doing something over here in this building for the tune of $150,000 to fix some of the problems we have here for the Cape Light Compact for no cost, and that they've been dragging their feet. And so I think we need to maybe talk to Bob Schofield and talk to see if we can get these contacts moving.
right, a very talented group of people who are trying to plan for our 2,066 kids here at the Bourne Public Schools. Found out tonight.
Yeah.
Right. Mr. Ellis, would you care to?
I had a meeting with the chief of police. It was in-depth discussion. It lasted a good many hours. We went through a line item of each item. And it came out and balanced very well with what we were talking about. And I think we're gonna find that what he's requested is online to what showed in the document that we just had before.
Yeah, I was extremely impressed with the chief's presentation. Mr. Ellis and I are doing the police and fire department, and Mr. Ellis is doing public works, and I'm doing ISWIM. So, some of the questions took from the playbook of Michelle Ford when she was chairman of FinCom. It's like, what would you do if you had an unlimited pot of money? And, he said he'd like to do something with, the rank structure, should, because supervision, he'd like to be able to have his sergeants out on the street more, when there's only one on. Generally, they're inside. A large consideration is liability and policing is, much of the problems are because of lack of supervision, lack of training. So he'd like to see that. And I said, if the town administrator told you had to cut anywhere else, what would you have to cut? He said, I have to cut police officers.
Correct.
There's nothing else to cut.
Yeah, and the police chief hasn't been asked to cut any police officers.
Well, I know that. He didn't have that in his summary, but it was very impressive. He did a good job. Mr. Ellis and I are also meeting this week with the fire chief on his budget, and I am meeting with Mr. Barrett at ISWIM this week on his budget, so we'll be able to get that knocked out, hopefully. And you're...
I'm in the process of setting up a meeting with DPW so that we can go forward with that. I look, it's gonna be complicated and difficult, but we can come up with something. The other thing I was very impressed with is how the police department operates in an antiquated building that is just gross. I don't know how those men work in there, how they can go to work every day and do what they do. And I think if the average taxpayer saw that, they'd be shocked at the condition that some of those officers have to work in. The cramped quarters are beyond belief, and it just screams for expansion. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on the police building committee, but if you want these officers to enforce the law and to protect all of us, they have to have an environment to work in that's safe. And this building, in my opinion, is not safe. And I don't know how healthy the building is on top of that. So that's really really needed. So we need to take a hard look at that.
Good.
I just wanted to, as you go to the police and the fire and the DPW, and I swim, although Dan and I joke, but seriously, you will see, especially police, there really is nowhere left in the expenditure line items to move. There's just nothing left, and I
Right.
think those that have town hall and library and council on aging and all of those others, there's just not any wiggle room left in the expenditure side of the budget.
Correct. Anybody
Thank you,
have
Mr.
anything further for the administrator? No more questions of the finance director while she's here, relevant to the budget, since we're on the topic of budget discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer.
Yes, I spoke with Tom about this earlier, and when I was at the school committee meeting last week, in their agenda, they have a statement that shows what the original appropriation is, what's been encumbered, and what's still left outstanding. And the more I look at it, I think we need to have something similar as well, so we understand, maybe not weekly, but quarterly. And the reason for this is as we're looking through these numbers, because it is our budget, we can see if any discrepancies are out there and to see why. So when people ask us, why did he spend all this money, at least we know why. We know with some departments, they spend their money at certain parts of the year, like recreation with the swim club, the swimming lessons and lifeguards. You'll start seeing more money, in previous years, more towards the last quarter, as in the first quarter of the fiscal year, you don't see as much spent. And so, I don't know, if Ed can provide the school committee members with this information, I would like to see us have this information to have more transparency of what's going on.
We certainly can, and as we've told the board several years in a row, that the first quarter is not anything, generally something that's, looking at the second quarter, we certainly can, mid-January, after we get them posted, right, December bills are due.
Well, if you're talking expenditures, you can have that every week. if you
Yeah.
want. How frequent would you like it?
Quarterly. Yeah.
Yeah, we can do quarterly for now if it's not much. I mean, maybe we can do it monthly if it's not too much to ask, but, I just wanna start a process to have more transparency of what's going on, so people understand how our money is being spent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Blanton or Mr. Ellis?
I'd just make a quick note that Mr. Meyer and I are also in the process of lining up a meeting in our liaison capacity to the rec department and talking about some of the issues with regard to the building, programs, access to things like open gym and the fee structure that have been talked about in the newspapers recently, that we're going to have an open discussion about that and hopefully just have a good understanding of where that is, if things can be adjusted or not. We're looking into that.
Tom has told me that maybe Thursday at 8:30 in the morning, no, 9 o'clock in the
I
morning.
know that Michael can't make that time, but,
I may be able to.
all right.
Thursday at 9 a.m. in Town Hall with the rec director,
Well, let me set it up first,
First.
Peter, okay? I think that'll be fine, but let me just make sure I get to both of them. Chrisanne was down the other end of the hall just before the meeting, so I couldn't see her. I expect that'll be fine.
Thursday at 9 p.m.? 9 a.m. rather? That's a conclusion.
Okay.
Thank
Mr. Ellis? Okay, I just had a couple of things I wanted to go over. What I think, and this is just my thoughts, I don't know if any other members of the board would find it helpful, but as you look at the top, by department, you have the 2015 appropriated and the 2015 expended, 16 appropriated, 16 expended thus far to the date down here. And then you have 2017 requested and adopted. I was wondering if, and I don't know if, maybe we just cut off the 15 and just use 16 and 17. I was wondering, it should probably state, I would presume, 2017 department head request, right?
It's request, right?
Right. And then 2017 town administrator.
Adopted means it's what you're going forward with?
Yeah, we had changed it this year, because it was an extra column. It was recommended and then adopted, so.
I think it's just, for clarity, it's the department heads submit their budget to you, then you,
Make a recommendation to you.
that's what you're looking
Right.
for, that's not the adopted. And then in another column, 2017 selectmen,
Well, that's not, yeah, if we can.
and that, if you could fit it, you could, if you did away with 15, maybe you could do it. But I'm thinking, that way the selectmen can chime in on it. I mean, for example, and I can't find, what section is recreation? That's for my next question.
Oh, you're talking about the 60,
What is it?
600?
600?
You're talking about the $63,000 versus,
Wait, don't be putting words in my mouth, Peter.
but I think I know where you're going.
Six. Okay. Bourne Recreation Park.
631-75.
Thank you. I'm looking down here, and I see the wages hourly temporary, like in 15 it was 50,000, it was 51 in 16. And I'm looking here and see no expenses, because you made it very clear that all their expenses are cut. I don't know where they're gonna be able to get their printing and stuff. I don't know if you're gonna go to other departments for that. But it looks to me, and correct me if I'm mistaken, or if I'm not seeing it, it looks like lifeguards are being cut.
Correct.
That's been,
Okay, I knew that. And as I think back to the year that I was chair and had 3 news stations, a number of print people here, are you serious?
If we go back to the override
I get it,
discussions.
I get the
I
override
am,
discussion.
you know.
I
I'm-
get it, I
okay.
get it. But what I'm saying is, you're gonna have the same thing, I believe.
I don't
would-
doubt it.
And I don't know if there is another way to make other cuts within recreation that allows you to do lifeguards. I'm not sure. It doesn't look like there's a lot to cut. Then if you don't have lifeguards, you've still got 2 full-time employees. And,
Well, you don't. If you go back to the override scenario again,
Okay.
the second employee there's hours will increase and decrease as after swish, it'll come down. When summer program gets kicked back up, it'll go back up. So it's not a constant, and that's about 40% covered by fees, is that right? Yeah.
covered by fees or not, it doesn't, I don't think that matters. It's all coming out, it's all coming to the,
Right, understood.
in any case.
And that will be a
I just-
discussion.
Yeah, I know, and maybe the board will take a vote or something like
Yeah.
that down the road. But, having said that, I just wanted to get it out there that I sat through being interviewed by
What was her name from,
Emily Rooney.
Emily Rooney,
from-
right,
From your favorite station, Public Radio. And I had the head lifeguard of the International Association of Lifeguards from Laguna Beach, California, calling. What's wrong with you people? So, having said that, I'm just looking at this now saying, maybe we ought to rethink some things. But it would, but primarily, it would help if we could have, it's the department head that makes the request. The town administrator makes the recommended cuts. And the selectmen should have columns. So if the selectmen want to sit and go through everything and vote it, I'm good with that.
Just for for permission, I wonder if I can use my phone so I can use the calculator for a minute, because I know under that new proposed policy, we gotta ask the chairman for everything.
Do you really need your calculator? What is it? I'll figure it out in my head. Never mind. No, go ahead. Use your calculator.
I'm
what
just
are you
saying,
looking for, Peter?
we can wait. I mean, I
We're
could
gonna
al-
have, this is a.
Yeah, this is
in the
gonna
grand
change.
In the grand scheme of things, this is gonna change
I know.
immensely, so.
Oh, I know.
I think we wanted to get some stuff. What else would help me, I just forgot, what else would help me, and I think would help the board, is at some point in time, you provide to us what all departments have for levels of staffing, and when you've got a vacancy, you can put, they don't have to put down needed, it's just vacancy.
Actually, that's something that we'll be bringing forward. There will be the staffing levels that they're last year, this year, next year proposed.
And I
type of
think
thing.
Mr. Mealy brought this up, and I'm not sure. If, when you're calculating the budget, and you're calculating potential payroll increases, because you've got a lot of contracts coming up, can you break it down and say, okay, if it's this percent, it's this much is saved in the budget, or is accessible, or if it's 0.25%, 0.50%, 0.75%, 0.1, 0.125, is that doable?
If the board were to look at various,
Scenarios.
relative to wage increases over the course of a fiscal year, we've got 2.5% plugged in as a guesstimate for what we think will happen in the negotiations after discussions with we have to have discussions with the board and steps. Now, that may be a little too little, it may be, I don't think it'll be too much, but if we were to say, if there was a 1% cost of living increase, as an example, that equals X amount of dollars by contract or by the number of employees?
I guess by the number of employees.
Okay, and then,
They could not do that by looking at that, I don't think.
no, but could we provide that? Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Ellis.
in light of the fact that you brought up about the lifeguards, which I wasn't aware that was gonna happen, I become concerned. We're a seaside community, and if you're gonna not have lifeguards, that means we're not gonna be able to teach the kids how to swim. And I find that to be a very serious and moral question that the citizens of the town need to really get back and soul search on that, because if that's the fact, I'm really concerned about that.
Let me answer that if I could,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Ellis.
Thank you.
Swimming lessons will be offered on a fee-based system the way they have been offered for years. That will happen. If the Board of Selectmen, as the executive board of the town, determines they want lifeguards at the 2 beaches or 1 beach, or you need to make that determination before the town meeting in February, because we have to have money in the budget in February so that we can recruit and hire in May and June. So I just want to remind folks that we can't put it in for July, because you won't be able to
Right.
do what you need to do to hire for June.
Okay.
So in my opinion, that this is probably the perfect time for selectmen, if they have priorities for FY17, that they start listing them now, and to see if they're viable or not.
Well, if I might, without sounding, priorities are, yes, if the board has priorities, the time is to tell me 2 weeks ago when we first had it on the agenda, and we've had some things come up, so the sooner we can set prioritization, the better we will be able to make those adjustments to reflect the selectmen's prioritizations. Swimming lessons will be held. Swimming lessons will be held, just so that people can be aware that they will be at Monument Beach, and they will be at fee just as they have been.
Okay. All right,
Michael's hand is up.
go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question with regard to lifeguards on the beaches, and we've talked about this ad infinitum, and what a value it is to the community, and how it would be a shame not to have them. But recognizing there are certain budgetary realities we're constrained by, we have a hard and fast history on what the costs are, right? Historically, what they have been. We can get that number up pretty easily.
Yeah.
Try to figure on out what it's been, what we'd forecast for this year, if we were to augment the budget to add that.
Sure, I mean, there's there's been a question from the certain selectmen on economic development or community development staff. There's
I have no idea who that would be.
But, I mean, all of these, we're kind of in a zero-sum game.
Right.
And I will work with the board in any way they want, but we need to be able to identify those as soon as practically
Well,
possible.
I think then if that's the case, you might want to consult with Chairman Mealy upon his return, maybe when you do the next week's meeting, and see if you can put something in.
Yeah,
Block out 15 minutes or so for the selectmen to come forward with their budget priorities, just to make you aware.
Yeah.
Then it'd take you and Linda a week or so to, I think, figure out where the money would come from and how
If it's
it would be,
possible.
how it would become available,
and,
so.
Well, in my opinion, what the town meeting in February and the town meeting in May ultimately is to take another look back at what we decided on last summer, you know, and to make corrections, because things do change, between what we thought about last summer and the reaction to it, and then going forward to see if we can correct some of the mistakes, but some of the decisions that we have made, because, now that the override has been defeated, we're starting to see some of these proposed cuts. People don't like what's going on, so if it's feasible, I would like to see us have a second crack at it, to see if we can see what our priorities are, and we're doing that in some ways by putting money back in for the bus, we're putting money back in for the library. Potentially, we're looking at other money for other issues in town that have been very stressful around town right now.
and as the members of the board and the chair of the finance committee have also stated that, having some history, not a lot of history, only a couple of weeks so far, but we can go back and take a look. We're at a point in a number of areas in the municipality, and I won't say town hall, because it's beyond town hall, where we're really walking a tightrope as to functionality and non-functionality in a number of areas. And we have to take that into consideration as we look toward some of the other things that we may have as priorities to do. We're in a zero sum, pretty much, and I will work with the board, certainly. It's the town administrators, up until this last year, there used to be columns, town administrator, budget, and then what the town meeting vote was, and we can add the selectmen's column in there, which would be, I don't think we've had that in 15 years or so, but we can put it back in. Certainly makes sense.
Just, it's.
Because, anytime the selectmen have requested a change in the budget, we've just gone back and made the
Right,
change
right,
for you
right.
as well.
Okay. All right, are we all set on number 7?
Might have members of the public who want to
MJ?
speak.
I want to make a comment on your suggestion about taking out fiscal year 15 columns. And I'm going to say, I have come to recognize the importance of keeping those columns in the budget, because that is your complete year history on a budget. And it's really important as you go through the budget to say this was what was appropriated and this was what was actual, especially when you look at some of the 3-year history for turnbacks, because there may be some items. And I know that when I asked the question about the legal budget, which has, the actual has been about $50,000 or $30 or $40 or $50,000 less each year than was budgeted. And that's, we're cautious because we may need it. But on the other hand, when we're making really tough decisions and saying, could we adjust the legal budget by $25,000 and shift it to lifeguards for $25,000? These are the kind of decisions that we're really faced with. So keeping that year history, I think, is really important. The other thing I would like to note while we're getting to the budget, that there's a lot of space here for notes on this particular budget report, which isn't really necessarily necessary. We tried to do percentage increases in the budget, and that wasn't working out too well. So at least the dollar up and down, it saves you a ton of math as you look at it. It's very hard when you want to be able to scan and go through what the plus or minus is between the appropriated last year and what's appropriated this year, I think helps quite a bit, because then you can easily do the percentage yourself. And also, on the total budget amounts, I would like the totals for the school department of actual to be included in the budget report, because they're not, they're zeros. So when you look at what was appropriated for schools and what was spent for schools, it's a zero for what was spent. And so it's hard to really have a accurate picture of that. So that's like something I'd like to see also.
The notes section just was a request for the purposes of the board
This, for now.
for now, so when they're meeting with the departments and their liaison work, they're able to make some notes as they
Yeah, that's-
discuss it. That will be gone in the final.
Okay.
Right, so you might be able to switch out the notes for the selectmen's
yeah.
budget. And interesting enough, the charter, and did a really close reading of the charter before I went to talk to the Charter Review Committee. And interestingly enough, the charter says that the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee will give their votes in the voter handbook
Yeah.
on every item. And so I think that's gonna become something that we should really try to like work out in terms of this year, of like how that actually happens.
What,
So, I
that's
mean,
something that I've asked the selectmen to think about for the past several years. It's very simple. In other towns that I've worked in, Finance Committee voted 11-1 to recommend, Board of Selectmen
it's like a chart that you get at town meeting, how did the
voted
selectmen
3-2
vote,
to
how
not
did-
recommend, yeah.
So if there's any difference, then you have it right there in front of
Yeah.
you, and it's a very, we've had I had the same thing before, so
Yeah.
All right,
that's
well.
fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your time on
Yep,
that.
sure, that's great. We'll figure that out somehow. We're moving on to item 8, Selectmen's Business, ratifying the intermunicipal agreement with Sandwich regarding beach stickers. This is a summary. Do you want this read?
You certainly may.
Okay. This is a summary of the proposed Bourne sandwich sticker reciprocity. It's a 2-year trial period for 2016 and 17. For Bourne residents, the first 200 Bourne residents who request Sandwich Beach parking stickers, excluding the use of Sandy Neck Beach, which is owned by the town of Barnstable, and Snake Pond, which has restricted access due to a gift deed, will pay Sandwich resident rates for stickers, currently $35. Any Bourne resident in excess of 200 who purchase a non-resident Sandwich Beach sticker will be charged a non-resident rate of $105. Sandwich will produce unique stickers for the 200 Bourne residents. Residential status will be determined by a motor vehicle registration registered in Bourne. For Sandwich residents by virtue of Chapter 127 of the Acts of 1884 are able to purchase Bourne shellfish licenses at the Bourne residential rate of $35 at present. The first 200 Sandwich residents who purchase Bourne shellfish licenses will be able to purchase required beach parking stickers at the Bourne residential rate, currently $25. Stickers will be valid for shellfish season only. Any Sandwich resident in excess of the 200 who purchase non-resident Bourne beach parking stickers will be charged the non-resident rate, currently $50. Residential status will be determined by motor vehicle registration registered in Sandwich.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Ellis?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we ratify this agreement between the summary of proposed Bourne sandwich sticker reciprocity.
Second.
We have a motion, a second on the floor, to ratify the summary of the proposed Bourne sandwich sticker reciprocity for the 2-year trial period. Do we have any discussion from members of the board?
Stickers will be available, Sandwich is already ratified there, and stickers will be available in March.
Well, that's what I was informed. I got an email from the town manager in Sandwich today. Typically around Memorial Day, I asked him to move that up to March, so they're gonna work on that as well. But his answer was typically around Memorial Day or June 1st.
Without having it in front of me, there are really dual rates, because if you set a set amount, that's the ordinary, but then there is a senior rate in some of these provisions, and I don't know whether it should be.
That was not, considered. The rate in Sandwich is the $35 rate. The issue of senior stickers was not discussed relative to the Sandwich resident rate. It'll be a $35 rate.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Any questions? All right. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Sounds unanimous to me. Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. Town administrators report.
A couple of quick things. We are, the county, we're part of the county bid for gasoline. And given that the prices right now are favorable, the county is going out to bid early this year for the gas, so it can be bought hopefully in bulk or reserved, futures reserve at this rate. So the county, through Elaine Davis, has been proactive in this, and the town has jumped onto that every year. 90% of the time we're cheaper. The precipitous drop in gas right now are a little bit more than what the tank price is, but overall, we have saved money over the years. I don't know if you've seen the emails through the county that there are what they call DLTA, and I cannot think of what that stands for right now, grants through the county that are available. They come out a couple times a year. We are applying, and I want to thank Sally Riggs for helping putting it together and working with Corinne to try to acquire the additional $70,000 needed of the $190,000 for the sewer study that we're doing for the 100,000 gallon plant here. We have the 110 or so from 120 from the county now on, and we're trying to get the other monies that are available.
Okay.
Just the budget, and we've said it several times tonight, but the documents that you have, both the draft full budget that you received on Friday and the numbers that Linda has provided tonight, they are subject to substantial modification as we move this forward. The bottom line probably won't change a whole lot relative to the departmental budgets, depending on what the selectmen want to do with the departmental budgets. But, I mean, overall, they're pretty well the same as they've been for the last several years. There are a lot of things in flux right now. We hope, as we move forward toward the budget season and through town meeting, those will be cleared up, and those numbers will be refined on a regular basis. There is a stormwater monitoring grant through the Buzzards Bay Action Committee that has been recently brought forward by the BBAC. Brendan is looking at it. He's going to meet with the Stormwater Committee and the Local Pollution Committee on it. It appears to be something that it would take some effort by DPW on monitoring things, but DPW seems to think they can. There's a lot of questions to be answered. Jim brought up a lot of those good questions today. Brendan and George, I think, will be at the next meeting of this group to discuss it, whether we move forward or not. But it looks like right now it may be something that we want to favorably do. I'm going to see, and I talked to the vice chairman today, I'll talk to the chairman as well, the executive session this evening that was, had to be canceled. Don made a good point. We may in fact have to have a meeting to discuss a number of things, but one of those has to do with the collective bargaining and some contracts that are related to that, and some things that will tie into that, the insurance contract and some of the other things. Next Tuesday doesn't look like it's too favorable with the sewer committee meeting at about 6 to 6:15 itself. So if we can set a time that we can put a daytime meeting together, and we have enough time to notify our representative from Cook and Company to come, that she can make it as well, it would be very appreciative, because if we do make some changes, and the board decides to do some of those things, we have to move in a fairly expeditious manner. For tonight, I'm done, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we are going to defer the selectmen's report, item A, goals, updated by Mr. Meyer and Mr. Blanton at their request. And they will have that on their next Tuesday's agenda, I believe. Is that correct, gentlemen?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we prefer to bring that on up when we have a full board complement.
Yeah, okay. All right, Mr. Meyer, do you have anything?
Earlier today, Fox 25 was at the Sagamore Fire Station. They filmed the Bourne Fire Department for Firehouse Fridays, I think it's what it's called. So recognizing the Bourne Fire Department for their for what they do to the community, and they bring donuts and coffee to their. So stay tuned on TV and on Friday. I don't know if it's this Friday or when it's coming out, but. It's nice for our fire department to be recognized for their efforts, because they do an exceptional job. That doesn't take away from the police and DNR and everybody
Well, I'm
else
hoping that
either.
the fire department shares those donuts with the police department. That would only be fair.
I'm on a diet.
They call them police biscuits anyway.
Police biscuits.
All right, Mr. Blanton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very briefly, yesterday I had the honor of attending the flag raising of the new sovereign territory to our, well, east and west, really, when you think about it, for the official reservation area for the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribal Nation. It was very interesting to see a number of the tribal members gather. I don't know how much the general public is aware of or knows the ins and outs of the creating and making and maintaining of a sovereign tribal nation, but we now once again have that organization in our midst. That's both the territory in Mashpee and the territory over in Taunton. So I bring this up not only because it's, I think, culturally and personally interesting, but it also brings up a number of questions that the surrounding abutting municipalities, such as the town of Mashpee, the city of Taunton, will be engaging with the tribe in intermunicipal, intertribal agreements and such. These are something that may or may not have an impact on Bourne residents, or certainly this municipal body, and we'll just want to pay attention to how those intermunicipal tribal agreements take place between the neighboring towns and the nation.
Great. Anything further,
Jim?
or Mr. Ellis?
No, I have no comment, thank you.
Just one thing, I was at Market Basket on Sunday, and lo and behold, there was the CEO standing in one of the aisles with his daughter, who's also with the company, and greeting some of his customers, and so I took the opportunity to...
RDT?
I don't know if it's T or S, it's the one who prevailed.
T.
Okay, I took the opportunity to introduce myself. I had met him at the grand opening,
Right.
and thank him for their generous donation towards the COA's
Oh, good, thank you.
efforts. I presume we did send something through the store manager to...
We did.
Okay, great. And that's it for me. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nicely
Any
reviewed.
opposed? Thank you, yeah.